He stood there in his $1,000 suit, the gleam of his ridiculously white teeth catching the fluorescent light of the boardroom. Julian Thorne, the Silicon Valley wunderkind brought in to disrupt our company, was radiating a smug confidence that turned my stomach. He thought this was my public execution, a carefully staged performance for the entire office to witness through the floor-to-ceiling glass walls. The smirk playing on his lips told me he believed he'd won, that he'd finally cut out the legacy thinking, holding back his grand vision for Oratech innovations. What he didn't know was that 48 hours earlier, in a quiet, wood-paneled office downtown, I had activated a dead man's switch. A legacy failsafe left behind by our founder that made me the one person who could unplug his entire world. As his personal security guard, a man I didn't even recognize gestured for me to stand. I kept my expression neutral, almost serene. Let him have this moment. Let him savor the taste of his triumph. It would make the system restore I was about to initiate so much sweeter. My name is Rosie Pratt, and until about 10 minutes ago, I was the head of creative product at Oratech. Now, I was just another casualty of Julian Thorne's corporate blitzkrieg, or so he believed. The conference room, with its transparent walls, felt less like a meeting space and more like an exhibit. Julian played the emperor, and my colleagues, heads bowed over their keyboards in the open-plan office beyond, were the reluctant spectators. I had sat across from him, my hands folded calmly on the polished chrome table, watching him draw out every second of this power play he'd been planning since his arrival 6 weeks ago. "Rosie," he began, his voice dripping with that practiced, condescending sympathy that tech bros use when they're about to gut you. "Your vision has been foundational to Oratech's past, but we're pivoting toward a more aggressive, market-driven future. Your position, in its current form, has become redundant." Redundant. I was the architect of Project Chimera, the AI engine that wasn't just foundational to our past, but currently generated 80% of the company's revenue. I could feel dozens of eyes on us through the glass. Kevin from engineering quickly tabbed to another screen when our eyes met. Maria from marketing pretended to be intensely focused on a spreadsheet. They all knew this was a message. If he could do this to me, no one was safe. "Your severance package is quite generous," Julian continued, sliding a sleek black folder across the table. He didn't even bother to open it. 3 months' pay, continued health benefits. More than fair, considering. Considering what? I had built the very heart of this company. My team had just secured a patent that would lock our competitors out of the market for the next 5 years. But Julian had his narrative, and facts were just inconvenient bugs in his code. "I understand," I said, my voice as steady and calm as a compiled program. I didn't touch the folder. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing me check the terms of my own professional death sentence. His perfectly sculpted eyebrows rose a fraction of an inch. He had expected tears or anger or a desperate plea to reconsider. Instead, I stood up, smoothing the front of my simple black dress. "Thank you for the opportunity to build what I have here," I said, the words feeling like acid in my mouth. "I'll go collect my things." "It will remotely disable your access," he said, the final twist of the knife. "Frank here will assist you." Frank, the new security head Julian had brought in, stepped forward. Not content with firing me, he needed the entire office to see me escorted out like I had stolen company property. "Standard policy for senior-level departures. For security," he added with a thin smile. The walk to my office felt like a mile. The familiar click-clack of keyboards fell silent as we passed. It was a digital funeral procession. I kept my spine straight, my pace measured. I would not give him the satisfaction of seeing me break. In my office, my former office, I packed with deliberate calm. The photo of me and Arthur Vance, the company's late founder, went into the box first. He had built Oratech from a garage startup into a billion-dollar titan before a sudden illness took him 6 months ago. He was more than a boss. He was my mentor, my friend. Would he be disappointed to see me leaving like this? Or would he be proud of the war I was about to wage in his name? "Ma'am, we need to keep moving," Frank said, his voice flat. I nodded, picking up the last item from my desk, a small, framed piece of acrylic containing the original, handwritten source code for the Chimera project's core algorithm. A gift from Arthur when we first achieved a stable beta. The elevator ride down 30 floors was both an eternity and a flash. When the doors opened into the main lobby, I saw him. Julian was standing near the security desk, chatting with the receptionist, but I knew he was there for me. He wanted to witness my final, humiliating exit. Good luck, Rosie, he called out, his voice echoing in the marble-floored space. The market out there is brutal. I'm sure you'll land on your feet eventually. Eventually. The condescension was suffocating. I stopped. I turned and walked the few paces back toward him, stopping just outside of his personal space. For the first time, I dropped the serene mask. I let him see something flicker in my eyes, not defeat, not anger, but something else. Something that made his smug smile falter for just a beat. It was the look of an administrator who knows the root password, the look of knowledge, of power, of a secret that was about to execute a command that would shatter his carefully constructed reality. "Thank you, Julian," I said, my voice low but carrying. "And instead of worrying about my future, you should probably check your own firewalls. The next 72 hours are going to be a system-wide reboot, and you're not going to like the new OS." Before he could process the metaphor, I turned and walked through the revolving doors, out into the crisp afternoon air. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I knew he'd spend the rest of the day trying to decipher my words, dismissing them as the bitter ramblings of a fired employee. But by the time he understood, it would be too late. My phone vibrated, a text from my lawyer, Evelyn Reed. "It's all in place. Formal notification to the SEC, and the board goes out Friday at 9 a.m. sharp." Friday. He had given me the greatest gift imaginable. Time to prepare while he celebrated his coup. He thought he'd removed a relic of the past to clear the way for his future. He had no idea he had just declared war on the one person with the power to veto his very existence at Oratech. He had just made the fatal error of trying to delete the system's architect. 48 hours earlier, I sat in the hushed, leather-and mahogany law offices of Reed and Associates, staring at documents that felt heavier than lead. Evelyn Reed, Arthur Vance's trusted attorney for 2 decades, adjusted her sharp, black-framed glasses as she laid out the final papers with surgical precision. "Activation is straightforward," she said, her voice carrying the calm authority of someone who had navigated countless corporate minefields. "According to the bylaws of the Vance Legacy Trust, 6 months after Arthur's passing, you, as the designated trustee and spiritual heir, gain full control of the trust's primary asset." She slid a single, deceptively simple document toward me. "The golden share." My fingers traced the elegant, embossed letterhead. Arthur had structured this brilliantly. It wasn't about majority ownership. It was about ultimate control. The golden share was a unique class of stock, a single share that held the power to veto any and all board decisions, including asset sales, mergers, and the appointment or removal of any C-suite executive, including the CEO. It was a corporate dead man's switch, designed to protect his life's work from exactly the kind of predator Julian Thorne had revealed himself to be. The board knew the trust existed, but they, and certainly Julian, believed it was a passive entity, a simple philanthropic fund. Arthur had kept the true nature of the golden share a closely guarded secret, known only to him, Evelyn, and now me. Julian's due diligence before taking the CEO job had been arrogant and hasty. He saw an innovative company with a recently deceased founder and a board eager for a charismatic leader. He saw an easy target. "Arthur was very specific about the timing," Evelyn continued, her gaze steady. "He wanted you to have enough time to see the new leadership's true colors before he handed you the weapon." I remembered the conversation vividly in the sterile white room of the hospital 3 days before he died. The cancer had ravaged his body, but his mind was as sharp as a diamond. "Power isn't in a title, Rosie," he'd whispered, his voice thin but intense. "It's in the architecture. Let them think they're in charge. Let them rearrange the furniture in the house. But you, my dear, you hold the master key and the original blueprints. You just need to know when to use them." "When?" I had asked, my voice choked with grief. "You'll know," he'd said, a faint smile on his lips. "Someone will try to sell the soul of the company. Someone always does. When they think they've won, when they're standing in the rubble admiring their work, that's when you remind them who really owns the house." Now, sitting in Evelyn's office, I finally understood. Julian Thorne, with his Stanford MBA and his reputation as a ruthless, turnaround artist, had shown his hand. The preliminary data I'd been secretly getting from Leo, a senior systems engineer fiercely loyal to Arthur's memory, painted a chilling picture. Julian was planning to gut Oratech. He was preparing to sell off our crown jewel, Project Chimera, to our biggest competitor, OmniCorp, where he undoubtedly had a golden parachute waiting. He would make hundreds of millions from the sale and his kickbacks, leaving Oratech a hollow shell, destined for bankruptcy. He would destroy everything Arthur had built. "There's one more thing," Evelyn said, producing an encrypted tablet from her briefcase. "Arthur left this for you. He said to give it to you only when you activated the share." I powered it on. A single text file appeared, written in a simple, clean font. "Rosie, if you're reading this, then the wolves are at the door." Good. I built Oratech to be a legacy, not a piggy bank for vultures. The company has survived market crashes, tech bubbles, and corporate espionage. It will survive whatever comes next, as long as you remember 3 rules of tech warfare. 1. Data is leverage. Gather it, analyze it, and secure it before you ever need to use it. 2. Never deploy a beta. Don't act on emotion. Launch a fully tested strategic plan. 3. The most effective attack is the one the system doesn't recognize as an attack until it's too late. Trust your instincts. You have more of my mind in you than you know. Go get 'em. Arthur, I closed the tablet, a cold resolve settling deep in my bones. Evelyn was watching me, her expression patient. "So, how do you want to proceed?" she asked. "Quietly," I said. "Prepare the activation papers, but mark them confidential." No announcement to the board yet. That's unusual. The bylaws require notification within 5 business days of any major governance change. The bylaws require notification, not immediate notification, I corrected her gently. We have until Friday. File the papers with the SEC Thursday at 4:59 p.m., 1 minute before the market closes. The official notification goes out to the board Friday morning. A slow smile spread across Evelyn's face. It was the smile of a lawyer who appreciated a clever tactical maneuver. "Arthur would be proud," she murmured. "What about the press? We let Julian's own arrogance write the headlines. For now, we operate in the shadows." I signed where she indicated. Each signature on the thick stack of documents felt like loading a round into a magazine. With the final stroke of the pen, I became the most powerful person at Oratech Innovations, and absolutely no one knew it. As I stood to leave, Evelyn added one more piece to the puzzle. "My sources confirm Julian has been in secret talks with OmniCorp's legal team. He's scheduled an emergency board meeting for next Friday to push through what he's calling a strategic asset restructuring." Next Friday. He thought he had over a week. He thought firing me on Monday would be the final move to clear the board, removing the one person who would fight him tooth and nail over selling Chimera. He had no idea he was just setting the stage for his own demise. "Thank you, Evelyn," I said, shaking her hand. "Keep monitoring, but don't intervene. Let him think he's moving undetected. His ego is his biggest vulnerability," I thought. "He'll want to savor his victory over me. He'll want to gloat. That's what will keep him blind." I left the law office and stepped out into the crisp Saturday afternoon. In 2 days, Julian would fire me, thinking he was removing an obstacle. In reality, he would be lighting the fuse on his own career. My phone buzzed, a text from Leo. "Heard rumors about Monday. You okay? Monday." So Julian was already leaking his plans to his inner circle. Perfect. The more confident he felt, the more careless he would become. "I'm fine," I texted back, "but I might need a favor. Can you access the data transfer logs for the Chimera servers from the last 6 weeks? That's way above my clearance." "Not for long," I replied. "Trust me." The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then appeared again. Then a single word, "Okay." What am I looking for? Anomalies. Anything outbound to an IP address that doesn't belong to us. And Leo, be careful. This is about to get very loud. I put my phone away. 72 hours to gather the ammunition. 72 hours to prepare for war. 72 hours until Julian Thorne learned the hard way that in the world of technology, as in chess, the game isn't over when you take a powerful piece. It's over when the queen makes her final move. The afternoon I was fired, I didn't go home. I drove straight to a nondescript coffee shop in a quiet suburban neighborhood, a place I knew Julian Thorne would never set foot in. I had exactly 64 hours to build an airtight case, to assemble an arsenal of data so overwhelming that when I made my move, there would be no debate, no negotiation, only surrender. My phone was already buzzing with a mixture of shocked and sympathetic texts from colleagues. I ignored them all, my focus narrowed to a single encrypted chat channel. "Parking garage, level P4, southwest corner." 9 p.m. Leo had texted. At 8:55 p.m., I pulled my car into the designated spot in the cavernous, eerily silent underground garage of a neutral office building. Leo's modest sedan was already there. A moment later, he slipped into my passenger seat, a heavy-duty laptop bag clutched in his hands. His glasses were slightly fogged, and his eyes darted around nervously. "Rosie, the entire office is in shock," he whispered, his voice tight with anxiety. Julian held an all-hands meeting right after you left. He talked about necessary restructuring and clearing out legacy bottlenecks. Everyone knew he was talking about you. They're terrified. Fear is the point, Leo, I said, my voice calm, cutting straight to business. What did you find? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he pulled out a rugged, encrypted hard drive and plugged it into his laptop. You were right to be suspicious, he said, his fingers flying across the keyboard. The numbers Julian has been showing the board about Chimera's operational costs, they're inflated. He's been routing server maintenance costs from his pet projects and booking them against Chimera to make it look less profitable. That's just the appetizer, I said. Show me the main course. Leo pulled up a series of network logs. Rows of green and white text scrolled down the screen. To a normal person, it would look like gibberish. To me, it was a confession. Here, he said, pointing to a specific timestamp from 3 weeks ago. 1:17 a.m., a massive data packet over 2 terabytes was transferred from the primary Chimera development server. He highlighted the destination IP address. I ran a trace. It's a privately owned cloud server, and the ownership is hidden behind layers of shell corporations, but the domain registration, it leads back to a holding company owned by OmniCorp. He had done it. He had actually stolen the source code. It was a digital heist of epic proportions. This is industrial espionage, Leo said, his voice barely a whisper. This is a federal crime. It will be, I assured him, but I need more than just the technical data. I need to show motive and a pattern of corruption. What about personnel files? Leo shook his head. That's a different system entirely. HR, I can't get in there without setting off every alarm bell in the building. Then we need Isabella Rossi, I said. Isabella had been Oratech's chief counsel, a brilliant and fiercely ethical lawyer forced into early retirement by Julian 2 months ago. She knew where all the corporate bodies were buried because she had been the one forced to bury them. Convincing her to talk would be the next critical step. The next morning, I met Isabella at a small cafe overlooking the water. She looked healthier and more relaxed than I had seen her in years, dressed in yoga pants and a simple sweater. The corporate warrior was gone, but her eyes were still just as sharp. Rosie, she said, a small, knowing smile on her face. When I heard what happened yesterday, I started a pot of coffee. I had a feeling you'd be calling. We sat at a quiet corner table. The scent of salt water and espresso filled the air. I need your help, Isabella, I said simply, to take down Julian Thorne. She sipped her coffee, her expression unreadable. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a tablet. I've been waiting for this day, she said, her fingers gliding across the screen. I made copies. Not exactly kosher, but neither was what Julian asked me to do. The files she showed me were damning. A suppressed report from our AI ethics committee detailing how Julian had ordered them to remove key safety protocols from Chimera to make it more commercially viable. 17 internal complaints filed against the executives Julian had brought with him, ranging from harassment to creating a hostile work environment, all of which he had ordered her to bury and settle. But then came the gold. An email thread between Julian and Bradley Kent, a board member, where Julian explicitly promised Kent's son-in-law a lucrative consulting contract in exchange for his vote to support the strategic asset restructuring. This one's my favorite, Isabella said, her voice laced with cold fury. She pulled up a recorded video call. On the screen, Julian was talking to his lawyers. Once Pratt is out of the picture, there's no one left who understands the core architecture well enough to question the sale, he was saying. We'll call it a necessary sacrifice to save the company. The board will eat it up. You kept all of this, I asked, amazed. Insurance, she said with a grim smile. Julian made a mistake when he pushed me out. He forgot I knew where every skeleton was hidden, and more importantly, I knew how to document everything. I need copies, I said, all of it. Already on this, she said, handing me a small, encrypted flash drive. But be careful, Rosie. Julian isn't just arrogant, he's vindictive. When he figures out what's happening, he'll be too late, I said. Isabella, would you be willing to present this to the board if it comes to that? She looked out at the water for a long moment. For Arthur, she said, her voice quiet but firm, and for every employee he's terrified. Yes, I'll do it. My next stop was the sleek downtown office of Chloe Webb, the most sought-after crisis management consultant in Silicon Valley. We had worked together once before, and she greeted me with a look that said she already knew why I was there. I was wondering when you'd call, she said, closing her office door. Julian Thorne has been making waves. I need a complete strategic communications plan, I said, getting straight to the point. Ready to deploy Friday morning. Press releases, board communications, internal messaging, social media, everything. Chloe leaned back in her chair, a glint in her eye. This isn't just a wrongful termination suit, is it? This is a hostile takeover, I corrected her. And I'm taking the company back. I explained about the golden share. Her eyes widened slightly. She was one of the few people who could grasp the implications immediately. What's the narrative? She asked, already pulling out a legal pad. Spiritual heir of the founder protects company legacy from a corrupt CEO, I said. We have evidence of intellectual property theft, securities fraud, and corporate corruption. Julian has been secretly negotiating to sell our core technology to Omnicorp. Chloe whistled, low and long. This is going to be a bloodbath. Julian won't go down without a fight. I don't need him to go down quietly, I said. I need him to go down permanently. She studied me for a moment. Your mentor would be proud. All right, I'm in. I'll have everything ready to launch at your signal. We'll need to coordinate timing perfectly. 9:05 a.m. sharp, I said. 5 minutes after the board gets the notification about the golden share, it gives him no time to spin the story. That's the point, she replied with a sharp grin. I spent Wednesday and Thursday weaving the final threads of the net. Leo provided security footage of Julian meeting with Omnicorp executives in a private suite at a hotel. Isabella provided affidavits from 2 of the harassment victims who were willing to come forward. Each piece of evidence was another nail in his professional coffin. That evening, I met with the 2 board members Arthur had appointed, men he trusted implicitly. Over a quiet dinner, I didn't reveal the golden share, but I told them I had discovered evidence of gross misconduct that threatened the very existence of the company. I'm going to make a move on Friday morning, I said. It will be fast and decisive. I need to know when the time comes, will you stand with Arthur's legacy or with the man trying to sell it for parts? Arthur saw this coming, one of them, a kind-faced man named George, said gravely. He told me once that the company's greatest test would come after he was gone. He said you would know what to do. By Thursday night, everything was in place. The evidence was compiled, encrypted, and distributed to key players. The communications plan was loaded. The legal team was on standby. At 4:59 p.m., exactly 1 minute before the market closed, Evelyn filed the papers with the SEC. The dead man's switch was now live. I stood in my apartment, looking out at the glittering sea of city lights. My phone buzzed. It was Leo. Julian's at that steakhouse downtown, the Oak Room, buying champagne for his whole team. I heard him laughing about how quiet the office will be from now on. Let him celebrate. Let him toast his victory. In 12 hours, he would learn what Arthur Vance had taught me. In the world of technology, a war is won not with brute force, but with superior code. And Julian Blake was about to suffer a fatal system error. Friday morning arrived, crisp and clear. I woke at dawn, but I didn't check my email. I didn't turn on the news. Instead, I drove out to a state park and went for a long, quiet hike. I needed to be disconnected to let the storm I had created unfold without my direct intervention. The physical exertion cleared my mind, stealing my resolve. At 8:45 a.m., I knew Evelyn was drafting the email. At 9:00 a.m. sharp, she would hit send. By 9:01, all hell would break loose at Oratech. My phone, tucked away in my backpack, started vibrating incessantly around 9:05 a.m. I ignored it. I kept walking, listening to the sound of my footsteps on the trail and the chirping of birds. By the time I returned to my car at 11:00 a.m., I had 52 missed calls. 10 of them were from Julian. Various board members, frantic executives, and concerned colleagues made up the rest. The only person I called back was Evelyn. The notification has been received, she said, her voice the epitome of calm. The board is in chaos. Julian is, and I quote one of the members, apoplectic. Let him be, I said. Don't respond to anything from his side until I arrive. Meanwhile, inside Oratech, the strategy of silence was working perfectly. Julian was scrambling, trying to understand how Rosie Pratt, the quiet head of product he'd so easily discarded, suddenly controlled the fate of the company. Leo was feeding me encrypted updates. Julian's losing it, screaming at the legal department. He's demanding to see the trust documents. A minute later, now he's calling every board member, trying to claim it's a fraud. Then came the message that made me smile. He tried to initiate an emergency lockdown on the Chimera server. As the senior admin, I denied the request, citing a potential external security threat, and locked his credentials out of the system. He's locked out of his own prize. The fool. In his panic, he was accelerating his own destruction. He was so used to bulldozing his way through problems that he couldn't recognize a situation where he had already been outmaneuvered. By noon, the rumor mill was in overdrive. I maintained my radio silence, letting uncertainty and speculation do my work for me. Julian's allies would be distancing themselves, calculating their own chances of survival. His enemies would be emboldened. A text from Maria in marketing. Is it true? Are you really in charge? I didn't respond. One from Kevin in engineering. Holy *ROSIE, Julian is having a meltdown in the glass box. Still, I stayed quiet. The beauty of silence is that it forces your enemy to reveal themselves. And in that void, Julian was self-destructing. At 2 p.m., one of the loyal board members, George, called me. Rosie, he's barricaded himself in the CEO's office. He's refusing to leave. He's threatening to sue everyone on this board. We've called an emergency meeting for 3 o'clock. When are you coming in? I'm on my way, I said. Let him stew. Let everyone see him for who he truly is. What was cruel was his plan to sell off the life's work of his employees for a quick payday. What was cruel was burying harassment complaints. What was cruel was trying to destroy my mentor's legacy. This wasn't cruelty. This was justice. This was debugging the system. Part 3, I spent the final hour before the meeting at a quiet park a few blocks from the Oratech Tower, not in frantic preparation, but in quiet reflection. I reread the note Arthur had left me, his digital words a calming presence. Never deploy a beta. My plan had been tested, my data was compiled. Now it was time to execute. At 2:45 p.m., I walked through the main lobby of Oratech. The security guards, the same ones who had watched me being escorted out just 4 days ago, straightened up as I approached. Frank, Julian's hand-picked head of security, was gone. In his place was the familiar, grizzled face of the old chief, a man Julian had fired on his first day. He simply nodded at me. "Ms. Pratt," he said, a world of meaning in those 2 words. "Welcome back." The elevator ride to the 30th floor felt different this time. It wasn't a walk of shame, but a reassertion of place. Employees in the halls stopped and stared, their faces a mixture of confusion, awe, and dawning hope. The news had spread like a virus through the company's internal network. Rosie Pratt, the woman Julian had tried to erase, was back. The boardroom was tense. The 2 board members loyal to Arthur sat on one side, their faces grim but resolved. The others, the ones who had been swayed by Julian's charisma and promises of quick profits, sat stiffly, avoiding my gaze. They knew which way the wind was now blowing. I didn't take a seat at the main table. Not yet. I sat in one of the observer chairs against the wall, a silent presence. Let Julian have his last moment at the head of the table. He arrived at 2:58 p.m., flanked by 2 expensive-looking lawyers. He had changed his suit, but he couldn't hide the haggard look on his face, the dark circles under his eyes. His usual commanding aura had been replaced by a brittle, defensive energy. He strode to the CEO's chair and sat down, a final, pathetic act of defiance. "Before we begin," Julian started, his voice strained, "I want to address the fraudulent and ludicrous claims circulated this morning." "Actually, Julian," I said, standing up. My voice was calm, but it cut through the room like a laser. "Before we begin, I need to notify the board that as of 9 a.m. this morning, I have activated the controlling power of the Vance Legacy Trust's golden share. This is an absurdity," one of his lawyers blustered. A hostile, backdoor maneuver? On cue, the boardroom doors opened. Evelyn Reed walked in, not with boxes of paper, but with a simple tablet. She connected it to the room's main display. On the 80-inch screen, the certified SEC-filed documents appeared, clear as day, detailing the undeniable power vested in the golden share and its sole trustee, me. Julian's lawyers huddled, whispering frantically. "We'd like to request a recess to review these documents," the lead lawyer announced. "Denied," said George, the acting board chair. "We have had our own counsel verify their authenticity this morning. Ms. Pratt, would you care to take your rightful place at this table?" I moved to the seat directly across from Julian. Our eyes met, and in that moment I saw the last of his bravado crumble. He finally, truly understood. This wasn't a negotiation. This was a system override. This was an execution. "Now," I said, opening my own tablet, "let's discuss why we're really here." I turned to the board. "Mr. Thorne has been CEO for exactly 47 days. In that time," I began, my voice steady and factual, "he has engaged in a conspiracy to commit industrial espionage by transferring the source code of our company's most valuable asset, Project Chimera, to a server owned by our competitor, OmniCorp." I swiped the screen. Leo's network logs, annotated and explained in simple terms, filled the monitor. Gasps rippled through the room. "Those are fabricated," Julian choked out. "Are they?" I countered, swiping again. "Then perhaps you can explain the 17 internal complaints against your executive team that you ordered Isabella Rossi to bury, or the email in which you promise Bradley Kent a lucrative contract in exchange for his vote to sell the company." The email thread appeared on screen. Bradley Kent went pale, looking like he was about to be sick. I let the evidence hang in the air for a moment before delivering the final blow. I played the audio from the recorded video call Isabella had saved. Julian's own voice filled the silent room. "Once Pratt is out of the picture, there's no one left who understands the core architecture well enough to question the sale. We'll call it a necessary sacrifice. The board will eat it up." The silence that followed was absolute. It was the sound of a career ending. Julian's lawyers were already discreetly packing their briefcases. He looked around the room, his eyes pleading, searching for a single ally. He found none. "I can save this company." He tried one last time, his voice cracking. "The Omnicorp deal? The only thing at risk here, Julian, is your freedom," I said, my voice cold. "The deal with Omnicorp is dead. As of this moment, you are fired for cause. And with the power of the golden share, I call for an immediate board vote to confirm the termination and to appoint George as interim CEO." The vote was a formality. It was swift and unanimous. Even Bradley Kent, trying to save himself, raised his hand against Julian. Julian stood up slowly, his face a mask of disbelief and rage. "You think you've won? You have no idea what you're doing. This company needs me. This company needs to be saved from you," I said, standing as well. "Arthur Vance built this company on innovation and integrity. It will thrive long after everyone has forgotten your name." "Security is waiting outside, Mr. Thorne," George said quietly. "They will escort you from the building." Julian stared at me, his eyes burning with a hatred that was terrifying in its intensity. "Arthur would be ashamed of you," he spat. "No," I said, my voice softening for the first time. "Arthur taught me to protect his legacy. You tried to auction it off. You made this personal when you targeted his life's work. I just finished what you started." He left without another word. Through the glass walls, we watched as the security chief he had fired personally escorted him to the elevator, beginning his final, humiliating walk out of Aura Tech. The moment the elevator doors closed, the tension in the room broke. It was replaced not with celebration, but with a profound sense of relief and a sobering understanding of how close they had come to disaster. "My God, Rossi," one board member murmured. "You saved us." "We saved us," I corrected. "Now the real work begins." In the weeks that followed, Julian Thorne's downfall was swift and total. Our internal investigation, led by the rehired Isabella Rossi, uncovered a web of deceit so profound that the SEC and the FBI launched their own formal investigations. Faced with undeniable evidence of wire fraud and theft of trade secrets, Julian's professional life was obliterated. His allies at Omnicorp cut all ties, leaving him to face the consequences alone. He became a pariah, a cautionary tale whispered about in the boardrooms of Silicon Valley. I felt no joy in his destruction, only a grim sense of completion. My focus was on rebuilding. The money that would have been Julian's golden parachute was redirected into the Arthur Vance Legacy Fund, an internal grant program to fund innovative, passion-driven projects from our own employees, the very people Julian had dismissed. We rehired the talented engineers and ethical leaders he had forced out. The culture of fear he had cultivated was replaced by a renewed sense of purpose and creativity. The company wasn't just saved. It was reborn, stronger, and more aligned with Arthur's original vision. 6 months later, I stood on the stage at our annual company-wide summit. I had not taken the CEO title. Instead, I had worked with the board to create a new role for myself, Chief Innovation Officer and Chair of the Legacy Trust. My job wasn't to run the day-to-day operations, but to be the guardian of our soul, to ensure we never again strayed from the path of innovation with integrity. The applause from our employees was thunderous. Looking out at their faces, I saw not just gratitude, but excitement for the future. After the presentation, Leo, now our deservedly promoted CTO, handed me a small, sealed envelope that had arrived by international courier. There was no return address. Inside was a single sheet of hotel stationery, postmarked from a city with no extradition treaty. The handwriting was messy, angry. "You didn't just beat me, you erased me. I hope you're happy, sleeping in the house you stole." I read the words, and for a moment I felt nothing. Then I folded the letter and slid it into the industrial shredder backstage. He was wrong. I hadn't erased him. He had written his own name into a footnote of failure the moment he decided that greed was more important than creation. I hadn't stolen a house. I had simply taken back the keys from a squatter who was about to burn it to the ground. Walking through the buzzing crowd, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't realized I'd been missing. The battle was over. The kingdom was safe. But more importantly, the work, Arthur's work, my work, was just beginning. The new operating system was installed, the malicious code was purged, and the system was running cleaner than ever. The healing had begun.